Hello, fellow YouTubers. This time I'm going to answer to the new round of community questions posed by TRexSpaceStation, whom I thank for his acknowledgement and his shout out, and I would like to reciprocate by answering to yet another set of his community questions. So, the first is a game that I've never mentioned on YouTube before. Well, since I have a small channel that is it's been active for a short time now in the retro community. I will just pick a game that made a very strong impression on me back in the day. It is Halo 2 for the original Xbox. Now this is the press kit that the local representative of Microsoft gave to all the members of the press. I was working then for a computer magazine, and they heavily promoted this game. It was a successor to Halo Combat Evolved, which broke ground and make significant breakthroughs in several aspects of the game, of the first-person shooter genre. And this game was I anticipated very eagerly, and actually it's one of the two games, the other being Forza Motorsport. The reason why I bought the Xbox for myself in the first place. And I have to say I wasn't very having played the game. I was mildly disappointed because of I was used to the higher resolutions and more fluid frame rates of the PC, and the Xbox, while being a competent machine, it couldn't match the specifications of a good PC. So yeah, this is the first game, so let's go to the game with Disney characters in it. Well, I didn't grow up as a kid with Disney characters as a part of my entertainment. It was more coincidental. It doesn't have anything to do with me liking or disliking the Disney characters. I just, I was brought up by watching with my sister, who is 4 years younger than me. We watched together. We used to watch cartoons like well, I know you will mock me, but I used to watch Candy. I know it's a girly show, but and also Heidi. You remember Heidi? It was about a little girl, a little German girl, I think, that went to the Swiss Alps and later on to the bustling city of Munich. And she had a a young friend, a young boy, a shepherd called Peter, with his granddad and his grandpa, and it was a nice cartoon. And also another funny cartoon that pops into my mind is Bolek and Lolek. It was a very funny and Polish cartoon from Poland. Of course, I watched my favorites were the Battle of the Planets, I believe it was. Yeah, a team of superheroes with fancy costumes that were inspired by different birds, and they had this sleek spaceship called the Phoenix. But I went far off the point, and I digressed. So yeah, a game with Disney characters. This is it. You know, I believe this is one of the two games. The other is Kingdom Hearts for the PlayStation 2. This is Cars. You know, with what's his name? Thunder McQueen, I believe. Yeah. It's an arcade racer for the PSP. I haven't played it. I haven't ever, and I don't think I will ever play it. It was one of these days that I went to the mall, and there was a basket of toys and games in the toy section that were discounted to a ridiculous price, 2-3 euros, and nobody was buying them, and so I saw it and I bought it. Yeah, it was one of these, you know, cases of automatic compulsive purchase. So, question number 4. A game set in the past. Again, here I could select from a multitude of titles, and I have to say, a game that popped into my mind as soon as I heard this question was LA Noire, and actually it was one of the games that TRexSpaceStation chose, so I had to go for another game. First, I would go for an old adventure game of mine, Conquests of Camelot, but perhaps I would do a separate video for this game. In the meantime, I would go with this Assassin's Creed, the first Assassin's Creed on the Xbox 360. When this game came out, before the game coming out, and we all saw the teaser trailer taking place in medieval Jerusalem. I believe it was the year 1190, during the second or the third crusade. That was the historic background of the game. So when the first teaser came out, and you saw the fluid animation, the main character Altair blending with the crowd, gently pushing others to mingled with the crowd so that he wouldn't be detected by the Templar Knights, and also how he executed all these acrobatics, the parkour stunts, how he climbed on top of the tower, and the camera did this 360 round, showing the whole city of Jerusalem, this panoramic shot. It was something that hadn't been done before. Okay, an exclusive game, that would be Gran Turismo 6 for the PlayStation 3. I could have chosen a number of different games, especially for the PS3, a platform that I have thoroughly enjoyed throughout the years of its life cycle, but I picked Gran Turismo 6 as an indication of the terrific games that came out exclusively for this platform, and terrific driving simulator that stands between arcade gaming, arcade racing, and hardcore simulation. You could say that it's a syncade, if such a term exists. So the hardcore racers would opt for a title such as Assetto Corsa or iRacing on the PC, but the Gran Turismo series is by far the most popular racing series in the gaming history. On PlayStation 2, I spent much more time on Gran Turismo 4. It was the first time that I had experienced a game of the Gran Turismo series. I never played a Gran Turismo game on the PlayStation 1. I didn't own such a console until very recently. But Gran Turismo 4 was absolutely astonishing by the sheer variety of and the wealth of its content, cars, the progression, even this grind. It was very enjoyable. The different missions, the licenses that you had to acquire, the challenges, and of course the variety of the beautiful racetracks. And Gran Turismo 6 is definitely the more technically superior member of this series of games. And a lot of people, when it came out, a lot of people rushed to compare it with Forza Motorsport 5 that had just come out for the Xbox One, and it was a bit unfair comparison because of the obviously superior hardware of the Xbox One. So the last game, the last question and the last game. A game that made you think. What I'm going to show you is one of the first, perhaps the first Lucasfilm game that I ever bought. It's Bluhm. It was relatively short. Back then I thought it was a long adventure, but actually I think it's rather short. But the unique thing about Bluhm is that whereas other games required the input of verbal commands of text, this one used music as command inputs. So as a young apprentice of the Guild of Weavers in a mythical world where different societies were based upon their profession skills. So there were the weavers that produced clothes, but also had the ability to imbue this fabric, the fabrics that they made and the clothes that they made with magical powers. So as a young apprentice of the Weaver Guild, you had to rectify an unfortunate disaster that befell your clan. A mysterious, destructive and evil force wreaked chaos into the world, tearing up the fabric between dimensions or something. It was a very imaginative plot, but what you had to do to overcome, the typical obstacles that an adventurer faces on his quest was to learn different spells with the assistance of your magical staff. You could perform different spells. You have to remember and to note down the musical notes, the sequences that constituted each spell. Each spell was a series of notes, a short melody, and sometimes you had to use your spells in an not very apparent way. You had to be a little imaginative. For example, there was a spell that you used to wrap up cotton or fiber into a ball and to wrap it up. So you had to use the reverse spell to unravel, and you have to use it on a tornado that appeared in front of you when you took a trip on a boat to the open sea. So you had to use the unravel spell to unwind the tornado that blocked your way. That was just an example of and another thing that was indicative of the big box games of this time, of the late 80s and early 90s, was the very nice artwork and the illustrations that adorned the boxes. And it's unfortunate that today, compare this to this PlayStation game. It's just a box containing the game, no add-ons. It's just pedestrian. But when you bought a game back you would be getting very nice manuals, you know, with very nice artwork as well. And another thing, the Bluhm, this game came with an audio cassette with a short theatrical play of sorts, with the story prior to the game. So it was a prelude, an introduction to the main game. So yeah, these were my 5 games, answering the 5th set of community questions by TRexSpaceStation. Well, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a nice one.